The audiobook of How to Analyze People. Dark Psychology. Dark Secrets to Analyze and Influence Anyone Using Body Language, Human Psychology, Subliminal Persuasion and NLP. By James Williams. Introduction. In my book Persuasion, the different ways that we have been persuaded were touched on. Many of us might have gone a long time in our lives without even realizing that we had been persuaded and manipulated so often. The damages of this manipulation can last forever, and it can be hard to recover. Once you become aware of how others might be subliminally persuading you, you can better protect yourself from these tactics in the future to maintain your independence and stay out of others' influence. It's important to remember that by understanding these concepts, you're better equipped to identify and defend against them, and your new knowledge shouldn't be about how you can use those same tactics to manipulate other people. There is a difference between evil manipulation and trying to convince someone of something else. You don't want to trick someone into doing things for you when they won't get any benefit at all. You only want to use these tactics when you need to persuade someone for something and you can't blatantly ask them for help. There are people that are harder to convince than others, so you might need to use some strategies of persuasion. Who might you need to persuade? You never want to take advantage of someone that already doesn't have much to give. Those you should be trying to persuade are people that hold power. You might want to learn how to convince your boss to get a raise. Maybe you want to try to get your girlfriend to move in with you. Perhaps you have to ask your parents for a loan. You don't want to punch down, but instead, reach up. This book will start with how you can analyze other people. Once you have a better understanding of how to analyze those around you both physically and psychologically, you'll be able to persuade them better towards your favor. Chapter 1: Body Language. One of the easiest ways to analyze other people is to look at their body language. How a person holds themselves, moves, and even speaks can tell you a lot about them. Everyone has plenty of variation between their mannerisms, and there's no exact way to tell what makes up a person. There are still many similar indications among groups of people that can give you a deep insight into how someone functions. It's not easy because it starts with becoming aware of your own body language. In order to understand and attempt to overcome the enigma that is body language, you have to be hyper-aware. In Book 1, we took you through the process of becoming aware of your thoughts and where they might come from. Now it's time to work on becoming aware of your body. In order to learn what makes a person different from others based on their body language, you have to first look at yourself and analyze how you hold your body. Some people might be more aware of their movements than they are their thoughts. Women are likely going to be more aware of their bodies and the space they take up, mostly because of the patriarchal society we grew up in. Everyone still might find difficulty in confronting the way they hold their body. You can lose focus while trying to maintain awareness, becoming too insecure with your own body and movements. This first chapter will go into the basics of body language while also laying a basis for how you can analyze others. Once you get to know the body movements better of another person, you can also understand what makes them unique. The more you know about a person, the better you can conclude the best strategy for persuasion. Cultural differences. Every person is different, and sometimes, how one person holds their body has a different meaning than someone who stands the same way. There are plenty of ways that a person's body language differs, so it's important to remember that not everything about a certain body movement is 100% true for every person. This is especially important to remember when talking to people with different cultural backgrounds. There are some cultures that practice modesty, so touching might be completely off limits. Other cultures might be more open to expressing their feelings through their bodies, so culture is important to remember when thinking about how a person might use their body. Studying others' movements. Once you become more aware of body movements and what they might represent, you can start studying them when interacting with different people. Everyone you come in contact with uses their body to represent different things. Some people are closed off, and others might be more open. These are some small differences you could tell just by observing someone's body language. When studying other people and yourself, it's important to try and act naturally as well. It can be easy to become hyper-aware of your movements, but know that you don't have to hold your body a certain way. Not everyone is as aware of body movements as others might be, so at the end of the day, don't look into your own movements too much. Still, once you start studying others' body movements, you'll start to realize how much you can get to know them. Certain things might all start to make sense after meeting a variety of individuals. You might notice that one of your friends is rather pretentious in the way they hold themselves or talk. Other friends might show how insecure they are with themselves, even though you thought they had been incredibly confident since you'd known them. Knowing a person's body language and having insight as to why they might move a certain way can allow you to understand them at their core better. This gives you better leverage when it comes to persuading them. You might want to match the confidence of your boss when striking up a deal for a raise. Perhaps you noticed you need to be more relaxed around certain friends that seem to be shy or nervous. Becoming aware of your body language can be scary at first, but eventually, you'll be comfortable with the way you move. To start practicing being comfortable with your own body, try hanging out in front of a mirror. When you're eating dinner, watching TV, or even lounging in bed, set up a mirror so you can see how you hold yourself. Once you get an outsider's perspective on how you move, you'll be able to see how others move as well. Eye contact. Eye contact is one of the biggest clues you can use to determine how someone truly is. It's important to become aware of your own use of eye contact as well, because it gives others clues about your personality and true nature. Maintaining eye contact is important to let a person know that you're interested in what they're saying and that they have your full attention. It can also be overused, however, and let people know that you're trying too hard to convince them that you're listening. Too much eye contact can sometimes intimidate others as well, so if you notice that a person is getting nervous because of the amount of eye contact you're having with them, change it up every now and then. Pupil dilation can be a direct indication that a person is interested in what you're saying. Studies have proven that when a person's pupils begin dilating whom you're making eye contact with, they are more interested in what you have to say. They are listening to you with their utmost attention, and they're thinking deeply about what you're saying. You know when a person's pupils are dilated while talking to you that they are legitimately interested in the conversation. Shifty eyes will indicate the opposite. Someone who is looking at your eyes back and forth is probably trying to convince you that they are listening. They are aware that they need to try and make eye contact, but they are completely zoned out with what you are saying. Those with shifty eyes might also be lying to you or trying to deceive you in some way. They might be having difficulty maintaining eye contact with you because they know they are being deceitful. Mouth movements. What someone does with their mouth is very crucial in understanding their personality as well. Someone with tight or pursed lips might be trying to concentrate, or they also might be trying hard to hide a sour face. You can analyze a person's smile as well. If the corners of their eyes aren't creased, they might be forcing a smile with you. Someone that's faking a smile isn't necessarily evil, they might just be thinking of something else, too distracted to give their full attention to what you're saying. Sometimes, smiles are also reactions to uncomfortable situations. When monkeys smile, it's not because they are happy, but mostly because they are showing their teeth as a way of threatening those around them. When they feel scared and nervous, they'll open their mouths wide, showing that they have teeth they could use to hurt. The same goes for dogs. They only show their teeth when they are feeling threatened. For humans, this can be true sometimes as well, but on a subconscious level. Nervous laughing and smiling are just a way for a person to alleviate their tension. You can tell someone is genuinely smiling when they have creases in the corners of their eyes. A person that is continually covering their mouth also is usually nervous. They might bite their lip, finger, or put a fist over their mouth. Knowing when a person is uncomfortable or nervous can sometimes be helpful when trying to persuade them. We'll discuss how and when to use this knowledge to persuade others in the next 2 chapters. Nodding. How a person turns and tilts their head can be a subtle movement. Most of the time, others aren't as aware when they are moving their head around. The neck and head movements of the person you're talking to can give you great insight into what they might be thinking on a deeper level. Someone that nods their head rather quickly while listening to you might just be anxious, trying to move the conversation along as quick as possible. They're attempting to set a pace for you so that you speak faster. They want to let you know they hear you, but you're not speaking fast enough. If someone is doing this to you, try to speed up your words in order to hold their attention. Someone who tilts their head to the side might have a legitimate interest in what you're saying. They are attempting to turn an ear towards you, so they can hear you better, whether they're aware of their movements or not. They also are indicating to you that they hear you and they want you to keep talking. It's a way for them to get closer to you in the conversation without having to make any interjections or interruptions. If someone is nodding too artificially, they might just be attempting to convince you that they are interested in what you are saying. They could be aware that they should be paying attention, but they might have lost interest. In an attempt to keep up, they pretend to nod their head. They also might not understand what you're saying, so they nod to make you think they're keeping up. If you notice others around you are artificially nodding their head, it'd be worth it to either change the subject to regain attention or explain yourself better, as they might just be confused. Mimicking someone's head movements can be very helpful in using persuasion. A gentle tilt of the head while listening to them can show that you are comprehending what they're saying. It can also show that you're empathetic to them, especially if they seem to be talking about something that is hard for them. Hands and arms. How someone uses their hands and arms is another way that body language can be interpreted to get a better understanding of the people you're interacting with. Our hands represent so much about ourselves. They're a way of expressing out stories, putting different emphasis on various parts. If someone's telling a story, they're going to use hand gestures to keep people interested. Think of someone engaged in a conversation as someone that's directing an orchestra. They'll lift their hands to keep up a rhythm and pace for those listening around. Someone's hands and arms can also express how open or closed off they are. They can be like the doorway into someone's body. If they're crossed tightly in front of someone's chest, that person might be a little more closed off, not wanting to engage too much in conversation. Having their arms crossed doesn't always mean that someone is necessarily closed off. They might also just be wanting to rest their arms, so if they're loosely hanging in front of their chest, they're likely just casually listening to you. Someone that has their arms outstretched, maybe over their head, will likely be very open and possibly even trying to exert power over a situation. Someone with their hands on their hips might also be trying to assert their power. Signals. Everyone has different body language cues that they use as signals. Between cultures, genders, and ages, different movements someone makes with their bodies can be conscious or subconscious signals that they're giving to the people around them. Signals let other people know bits of information without having to say anything at all. Someone with their arms crossed, eyes fading on a couch at a party is giving the signal that they're likely ready to head home for the night. Someone else on that couch could be sitting on the edge of their seat, laughing loudly, signaling they're not going to be heading to bed anytime soon. Signals help the people around the signaler know things that they might not easily be able to express with their bodies. Some are very good at picking up on other people's signals, and some people struggle to understand those around them. When it comes to trying to persuade someone, there are some crucial signals that a person will need to be able to properly lead a conversation. Starting a conversation. Next time you're sitting quietly in a room with another person, wait until they start the conversation to speak. This will allow you to study how they might start a conversation. Most people will give some sort of signal with their body that they are about to begin speaking. They might clear their throat, turn their head, adjust their shirt, or shift in their seat. There is usually something, no matter how small it might be, that a person does right before they start a conversation. When it comes to your turn to start a conversation, Notice what you do before you begin speaking. Don't start with an or a. That lets the other person know right away that you're not very sure about what you're going to say. Try starting a conversation without doing anything. See if you can just start speaking without clearing your throat, moving your head, or doing anything else. Study how the other person reacts. They might be surprised or thrown off guard that one of you had started speaking. Starting a conversation, especially one that is meant to persuade another person, is important for laying the groundwork for your argument. No one is going to want to give their full attention to someone that is struggling to start. If you're nervous and jumping over your words right off the bat, it's going to be much harder to keep up. Leading the conversation. Once the conversation has started, it can be tricky to maintain the right amount of back and forth. You don't want to be too pushy, but you also don't want to let them talk too much, not allowing you any time to state your points. If you feel as though the other person isn't letting you talk enough, there are obvious phrases you can use to speak your mind. You might try saying something like, "Can I just say, could I speak for a minute?" Or, "I'm listening but can I say something really quick?" These can be hard to say in some situations, and some people might even perceive you as being rude if you make a large interjection. What your best option might be is to use your body to redirect focus. Put your hands in your hips or tilt your head to let the other person know that you have something to say. Try leaning in to let them know that you want to take over as the leader of your current conversation. Leading the conversation can be tricky, because no one wants to listen to someone that is interrupting them. It's still important that you get your turn to speak as well. There are ways you can practice leading conversations so that when it comes time to have an important persuasion, you can properly lead. Next time you want to say something, don't. Instead, let the other person continue speaking and interject later. Sometimes we get so anxious to say our part we distract from the true conversation, invalidating any argument we have to the person that we interrupted. An alternative way to practice leading the conversation is to speak up the next time you want to say something. If you have something to say but you would rather just keep quiet, force yourself to say what you want. These two methods of practice will give you two alternate perspectives on leading a conversation that you might not get otherwise. How your body language affects you. Believe it or not, how you use your body can directly affect how you function as well. There are ways that you can use to improve how you think, and the capacity of your memory just by the way that you use your hands and arms. Not only are there physical differences in terms of how you use your body, but you will also be affected by the way others perceive you. If you're constantly closed off, always crossing your arms, there are probably a lot of people that might not open up or talk to you because they assume you have no interest in conversation. If you're always very open with your body, exerting confidence and holding yourself high, others might end up being intimidated by you. You might not have any intention of closing others off or being intimidating, but your body can show that in ways that your mouth doesn't. It can be tricky to become self-aware of your body movements, but once you do, you can really alter what someone thinks of you. There are some people that might have a strong conscious mind, but perhaps they hate their body. They then might close others off by trying to hide their bodies, making others think that they're judgmental. Sometimes, a person is just trying to cover up their body and not themselves. You would be surprised at how much confidence you can feel just by changing up the way you hold your body. People can still see what you look like even if you keep your arms crossed. You might think you're altering others' perceptions of you, but really, you're just remaining closed off. There are other ways that your own body language can actually mentally affect you. Open your mind. Someone that starts opening their arms when they talk will begin to let others know that they are much more open-minded. If you stand with arms open, or just hanging relaxed by your side, you let the people around you know that you are confident and willing to talk with them about different things. While having open arms is a signal for others, it's also a signal for your brain. Studies show that by standing with open arms versus crossed ones, you can actually signal your brain to be more open. You'll start to think of new ideas that you wouldn't if you kept your arms crossed. The same goes for the rest of your body. The more open you are with your movements, the more you allow your brain to have different ideas. Improve your memory. Those that talk with their hands also tend to have a better memory than those that don't. Using your hands can put physical reminders in your brain for ideas and thoughts that you might be discussing. If you mimic numbers or shapes when you're talking about different ideas, especially in a business setting, not only will you remember what you're discussing better, but those around you will find your story more memorable as well. Using your hands to talk while telling a story will also help you remember the things that you went through. You're encouraging your brain to continue thinking, and keeping your arms open, just as we mentioned in the last section, will open up your brain to new thoughts and feelings you might not have had should you have spoken with your arms crossed and closed off. Verbal cues. While there are many things that a person can say with their body, there are many more things that they can say with their mouth. There's a seemingly limitless amount of languages out there, as each specific language has many subparts. Think of how many different accents there might be in just New York City. As we continue to develop and blend different cultures and languages, only more will develop. It's hard enough to keep up with what we already know, but there are ways to still pick up on others' meaning without having to memorize every word in the dictionary. Just because a person says a certain word doesn't indicate that they're actually meaning what they say. How many times have you said you were fine, when really, you wanted to explode with thoughts? We say what we don't mean all the time because it isn't always easy to put words to our thoughts and feelings. Many people take their frustration or sadness out on other people when they don't actually mean anything that they're saying. Knowing why people say the things they do can be one of the trickiest codes to try and crack. You don't always have to know exactly what a person means in order to understand what they're trying to say. You can pick up on what a person's intention is by listening to how they talk and mixing that with their body language. It's important to read someone's mood so you don't say the wrong thing or anything that could potentially change the direction of the conversation. Next time you find something on TV that's in a different language than any you can speak, try watching without subtitles. You'll be surprised to see that you actually understand part of the storyline. Don't look at what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Is there pain in their eyes? Did they look happy or sad? Sometimes if you can't understand what a person is saying, maybe because the room is loud or they're speaking softly, try looking into their eyes. You might get a better sense of what they're saying than if you just watch the words their mouth is attempting to put together. There are certain specific cues that someone can give when they're trying to direct a conversation. When you're trying to persuade someone, you might want to try and use different keywords to help you in leading the conversation. Some people get too hung up on the actual words someone is saying when they should just be trying to listen to the message they're getting across. It can seem difficult to try to crack what someone else means, but it can be done. Think about your pets. You can tell if your dog is sad, sleepy, hungry, or in a playful mood, but you don't have actual conversations with them. Sometimes you can analyze what a person is saying best by figuring out the noises they're making rather than dissecting every word that they say. Emphasis cues. When trying to persuade someone, you're going to want to have a pretty good argument already prepared in order to build your case. You might want to include some emphasis cues when you're speaking. It can be hard to incorporate these phrases naturally, but it's good to practice so you can become a better persuader. This is important. You need to know, let me explain, or all phrases that grab the attention of the person that you're speaking to. You might start to notice others' emphasis cues better after reading this section as well. You should be listening, and using in your own speech, phrases that seem to put emphasis on an important part of a conversation. Sometimes, these emphasis cues aren't even actual phrases. They might just be verbal indications that something is important, such as someone raising their voice when talking about an important part of their argument. They also might repeat the word several times or stop for a pause in order for the listener to take in what they just said. Emphasis cues are important to understand in order to get a better grasp of what might be important to an individual. If you listen to what they're putting emphasis on, you'll be able to also formulate your thoughts and arguments around the things that are important to them. Organizational cues. First, second, third, to summarize, the topic is, or all phrases that could be considered organizational cues. These cues help a person indicate that they are trying to organize their thoughts. Again, maybe putting emphasis on the things that are the most important. Organizational cues are important for you to use in your arguments and persuasions in order to get people on your side. You want them to know that you're listening to what they have to say, and that they should be listening to you. You're trying to formulate a plan based on both your thoughts and opinions, and not just the words of one specific individual. Organizational cues allow the speaker to put emphasis on what's important while also maintaining a clear thought and direct focus. Organizational cues might not be phrases either. It could just be someone clearing their throat, redirecting the conversation back to a previous topic, or stopping in order for everyone to collect their thoughts. Watch your pitch. Pitch is an important key when trying to direct one's conversation in their favor. Pitch is the level of your voice, and the overall sound quality. Someone with a deep pitch might have a more soothing tone, while someone with a high-pitched voice might make their listeners more alert. Not everyone can help the natural pitch of their voice. There are some people that have extremely low voices that are hard to hear, and some people just have naturally shrill voices that seem as though they bother everyone around them. While your natural pitch can't always be controlled, you can at least help direct that pitch towards a more productive tone in order to keep your listeners engaged with what you have to say. Many of us let our pitch become too high and whiny when we are in professional settings, trying to keep our dictation sharp. If you feel like your voice is becoming high and shrill, don't be afraid to stop, clear your throat, and start again. The people around you will likely be grateful that you're adjusting your tone for their listening pleasure. Be careful not to let the end of your voice go up when speaking. Many people, especially when talking on a phone, tend to let the end of their words go up like they're asking a question. This kind of speaking is also common among those that might be giving a speech. They'll say a phrase very clearly with dictation, but they'll also end the sentence in a high-pitched way as if they're asking a question. This is something that should be avoided in order to keep the attention of your listeners. It's important to find your optimal pitch. Some people have very soft voices that can be hard to hear. If this is the case, it's important to practice speaking up when it's necessary. Someone that tends to speak loudly should try talking low as often as possible to help balance their pitch out. The greatest way to practice is alone, and if you record what you're saying. You don't want to deeply analyze the way you speak too much, but practicing always helps, especially for those that find difficulty in speaking their voice. It's also important to have a confident pitch to let others know they should listen to you. Someone that's always talking timidly or like they're asking a question will let the others around them know that what they have to say isn't interesting. If you're so unsure of what you're saying, why should someone else listen to you? The best way to ensure others are paying attention is to make sure that you speak with confidence. Listen to others. Talking about yourself can elicit the same good feelings that money and food cause. People like talking about themselves more than they enjoy listening to other people talk about themselves for the most part. While it can seem selfish, it's true that most people would prefer to talk about themselves. This means that when conversing with other people, you should avoid talking about yourself too much. You don't want to make the conversation completely about other people, but no one will pay attention if the only thing you talk about is yourself. Giving advice can also be helpful, but people generally don't engage as often with those that offer too much advice, especially when it isn't asked for. Listening to other people can actually be challenging for some. They might find it difficult to not let their mind wander, especially if the other person is talking too much about themselves. Some people will find that they're usually forming their next thought while the other person is talking instead of actually listening to them. If you find your mind wandering when someone else is talking, redirect your thoughts back to their words. Don't just listen to what they're saying. Watch how they're saying it. Listen to their voice and look into their eyes. People will notice whether or not you're listening to them. Even if they aren't skilled in body language, they will still be able to at least sense that you might not be fully engaged as well. Don't just put an emphasis on listening to others. Make the conversation about them as well. Ask questions about the person, attempting to get to know them better. You'll find that people usually like to answer questions about themselves. This is often a technique you'll see in many salespeople. They'll ask where you got your shirt, or if you've had a good day. This is to get the person thinking about themselves, and they'll usually end up opening up a bit more to the salesperson as well. People don't like to be corrected. While it can be hard to avoid sometimes, most people don't want to be interrupted to be told that they were wrong. Most people will respect you much more if you just let them talk rather than trying to prove them wrong. This is very important to remember, especially when trying to persuade and analyze others. Talk about we, not you. If you're trying to make suggestions, maybe to a spouse or friend about an improvement in their lifestyle, use we instead. Don't say, you should try waking up earlier on the weekends. Say, we should get up early on Sunday and go on a walk together. People will respond much better to suggestions if you include yourself. Apologizing. It can be hard to apologize, especially for those with high levels of pride, but it's important in gaining the respect of the people around you. If you apologize for being late rather than giving every explanation you can, most will respond much better to this than if you were to try to make yourself look better with excuses. They also like to see humility, and that you maybe aren't afraid to express yourself. If you can open up with someone and just say, I'm sorry I didn't respond to your text, I was just having a really bad day, they'll usually be very forgiving rather than if you would have just blown them off. However, don't apologize too much. It can lead others to not trust you. Sometimes we have the urge to apologize for things that were out of our control in an attempt to make ourselves look better. We'll say, I'm sorry the movie was so bad. After going out for a movie night, even though we had no control over the production. This is nice every once in a while, and certainly shows humility and vulnerability to those around you. But too much of it can also make you seem untrustworthy to others. If you have to apologize after every little thing you say, why should anyone listen to you in the first place? Next time you feel the urge to apologize for something that was out of your control, try saying thank you instead. After having a long conversation with a friend, don't say, sorry you had to listen to me rant. Instead, try something like, thank you for being such a great listener. I'm glad to have a friend like you. People will generally respond much more positively to a thankful person than someone that always invalidates themselves. You'll find that you start to treat yourself much better if you stick to this method of apology as well. The power of your body. Our bodies have so much power, and not just with how much we're able to lift or carry. Physical strength is important, but even the weakest of people have the ability to control a room with their body movements alone. At this point in the book, you should have a basic understanding of what a person's body language might mean. We can't get into every specific detail of what someone's physical actions might be trying to convey, but the framework for how to analyze those movements is there. Once you understand how someone else might be using their body to persuade others, you can start to work on your own skills of persuasion. There are many ways that someone can use their body to convince others to do what they want, but it won't always work on everyone. Some people respond to sexual persuasion while others are repulsed by the thought. Some people respond to a physical threat from those that seem stronger than them, but others might be ready for the fight. There are plenty of ways that you can use your body to persuade others without being sexual or physically intimidating. Keeping your body open and visible is crucial in letting others know they can trust you. Try making sure to remove physical barriers that might keep you separated from the person you're talking to. Step around a chair or table that's blocking you from making a full connection with the person you're trying to talk to. This also shows that you're confident and interested in speaking your mind while hearing what the other person has to say as well. When analyzing other people's movements, you can also figure out what things you can do yourself to be more confident. Study certain celebrities and see how they hold themselves in various scenarios. Everyone has their own movements, but mimicking others can still help you find your own footing when it comes to having a persuasive demeanor overall. Smiling is important. Our smiles are one of the most powerful tools we've been given. You can turn any situation from bad to good just by turning up the corners of your mouth. Some people feel as though if they don't have straight teeth or smiles that are bright white, they aren't worth anything. Even those that don't have all their teeth can have much more beautiful smiles than someone that's spent thousands on dental work. A smile isn't just about what teeth you're showing. It's a way to engage another person. Studies have proven that most people will smile if someone else smiles at them first. If they do smile, they'll end up having a better mood overall. It can seem weird, but simply smiling can lift someone's spirits. Next time you are feeling particularly down, smile. It sounds so silly, but it might work. Smile over and over again, and even though it might not turn your mood around, it will certainly help to at least temporarily lift your spirits.